Hey guys, welcome to our tech support series here at ENVO. My name is Amir and today we're going to unbox and build our ENVO Lynx. Now that we got the box all opened up, we got our manual. Please make sure you thoroughly read this. We're just going to set that aside. Now we got a couple boxes to grab. These are our accessories, our pedals and our fenders. We got our seat in this box and we got our rear rack over here, and we're going to set these aside. Now we're going to pull the bike out of the box. So we're just going to carefully grab the front rack and the rear wheel. Should easily just come out. Place it down. Put your kickstand down and lean it over. So now we're going to remove this protective foam. We're going to grab our cutter and we're just going to cut these zip ties off. Be careful with the handlebar. Just set that down. Pull the handlebar stem up, push the locking mechanism out, and then lock the stem in place, and lock that in place. Now we're going to get the handlebar, and we're going to open the clamp, and we're going to stick that into the post, making sure we get in all the way to the minimum insertion, and then we're going to close the clamp. Okay, now we're going to remove the foam off the handlebars, making sure we don't scratch anything. Now our next step, we want to install the seat onto the seat post. So we're going to grab the box we grabbed earlier and open it up. In this box we got our seat and our charger. And we're going to grab our 6mm Allen key and we're going to loosen this up just enough so that there's enough room for the seat to go in, but not too much that the bolt falls out. Okay, so we're going to spin one of the clamps to the side and we're going to get the seat and line it up. And we want to pull it up and spin it around and it should line up. Now we want our seat to be level to the ground. And looks good. And we're just going to tighten up this bolt, making sure that piece of the top doesn't spin freely. We want to make sure this is pretty tight. Cool, should be good. So now we want to grab the accessory box that we grabbed earlier. Now that we got everything out of our box and on the table organized, making sure we got all our bolts and nuts, we're now going to build the rear fender, and that begins with going towards the short length side, and we're going to grab the longer of the two fenders, and that will be going just like that. We're going to grab one of these silver pieces and we're just going to slide it in under there. Now this part may be a little tricky, so you just got to be a little bit patient with it. Now that we got that part lined up, grab one of these black pieces, line it up with the hole, grab one of our small bolts, trying to get that threaded in. Now you can grab your 4mm Allen key just to kind of get that going in. Don't need to tighten it up right now, just to get it in place. Now that you got the first bolt in, we're going to grab our second bolt and thread that in. Grab our 4mm and just give that a light tighten. Okay, now that we have that side all finished, we're going to repeat the same process for the other side. Okay, now so for this installation, I'm just going to grab my 4mm Allen key, and first step, I'm just going to put the fender just to place it on here, because we want to have the rack to be on top. So we're just going to line it up with these holes over here, and I will just install this screw. One on the left side and one on the right side. Doesn't need to be tight yet, can do that later. So we can see here that this is the hole that the rack will go on and the fender will go on as well. So this is where we will be needing the longer of the two screws. So we'll just set that aside for later, and we'll do the longer fender stay first. So we'll grab a washer and we'll just screw that into place with our 4mm Allen key. So we're going to grab the fender stay, and it's going to be going behind the rack stay. So we'll position that in place. We're going to grab our long bolt with the washer, and we'll just line it up with the hole and screw that into place with our 4mm Allen key. Again, doesn't need to be super tight yet. Just enough. We'll tighten everything later. So now we will repeat the same process on the other side. With this hole over here, and we're going to grab one of our smaller 4 bolts, and we're going to put a washer in it, and we're just going to put that lightly into place. We can fully tighten it later. So now that we got everything all assembled up, we're going to go for fully tightening every bolt that we put on there loosely. So we'll start with the fender stay, or the rack stay. Get this bolt. And we'll do the same for the other side. We also got these bolts that we didn't fully tighten. So we'll just make sure it's all lined up, and we'll give this a full tighten. Same with the other side. Okay, now that we got the rear fender and rack installed, we're going to move towards the front fender. So we'll just need the bolts and the 2 washers and the nut, and we're going to need a 5mm Allen key. And we're also going to want to deflate our front tire so that we can fit the fender into position. Okay, we're going to start by removing the valve cap. I'm just going to unscrew that, and we can just stick our 5mm Allen key in there and pull all the air out. That should be good enough for us to just sandwich that. So we're going to get our front fender. We're going to get the longer of the side, and that's going to be going at the back. So we'll push that in there nicely. Now that we got our bolt, we're going to remove the nut and the washer. Alongside that, we got our 5mm Allen key and our 10mm wrench. So we're going to go and install the bolt through the fender, through the holes, and out the other side. We're going to grab our nut and washer and screw that into place. We're going to grab our 10mm wrench, and we're going to start tightening this up. Now that we're near the end of the tightening, we want to make sure that the fender is in its highest position possible so that we don't get any rub on the tires. Okay, that looks good. Okay, now that we got the front fender installed, we're just going to double check that we have no rubbing on the tire. So we'll just lift the bike up a little bit, give it a little spin. Looks all good. Now we can pump the tire back up to 40 psi. Okay, so now we're going to install our pedals. All we're going to need is a little bit of grease and our 15mm wrench. So we're just going to apply a little bit of grease to the pedal, just a little bit, and we're just going to spread that around to both of the pedal bolts. That should be good enough. Okay, so for installation, make sure you note which side is right and which side is left, and we can clearly see that. So first we're going to install our left pedal. It's quite easy for a little bit. We'll just line the bolt up with the hole and just begin pedaling backwards. And the bolt should catch the threads and start threading itself in. Nice. And we can just finish up the tightening process by just giving it a nice crank at the end. Sweet. And now we will repeat the same process on the other side. So same thing, line up the bolt threads with the crank threads and just start beginning to pedal backwards. Once we're finished with that, we'll just give it a last little tighten. Should be good. Okay, now we're going to install our reflector and our bell. For both of these, we're simply just going to need our Phillips screwdriver. Now you can put these on whichever side you prefer, but generally we will put them on the right side for the bell and the left side for the reflector. So we're just going to undo the screw and we're going to position the bell over the bar and tighten it back up. Now we can kind of shimmy it as close as possible to the grips so you have quick and easy access to it. Nice. So we're going to grab the reflector and we're just going to position that in right there. Get our nut. Put that in position. Get the screw. Doesn't need to be tight, as we need to organize the handlebars, and we'll do that later. Okay, so now we're going to install our tail light, and all we're going to be needing is our 8mm wrench, and we'll just open up this box and take our light out of this little plastic bag. Okay, now we're going to line up our light with these holes and put the washer and the nut and tighten that up into place. We'll grab our 8mm wrench. That should be all good. Now we're just going to remove this flap. Now we're just going to make sure that our light is working by pressing on that switch. Okay, so now we're going to install our front headlight, and all we'll be needing is our 5mm Allen key and our 10mm wrench. And we're going to start this off by cutting this zip tie that's holding the light in place. Okay, so now we're going to unwrap a little bit of this protective sleeve that's wrapped around this light wire so we can get some length out of it. So we're going to have our light, and we're going to undo this bolt here a little bit just to take it out. We're going to line up our headlight, put the bolt through, washer, and nut. And we're going to tighten everything up with our 5mm Allen key and our 10mm wrench. And we want to position the light like so. That should be all good. Now that we got our light all fully installed, we're just going to get this protective wrapping and wrap it up nicely back in place. Okay, now we're going to connect the battery with these pins. We're just going to remove this black protective cover. Now we got that all lined up. We're going to line it up with these pins. It is generally hard to see, but if you just spin the plug around and give it a little wiggle, it'll fall into place, and you can screw in the lock nut and lock that into place. Okay, so now we're going to move to our handlebar, and we're going to start with this clamp here. We're going to open that up and adjust the handlebar to the position that we like. Now we want to make sure these grooves are centered into our handlebar enough that we can't see them on the edges. And now we will close that up, making sure it's tight, not too tight. So I'm going to tighten that up a little bit more just so that it's firm. And now I'm going to make sure that everything on this handlebar is tight. I'm going to check my grips by giving them a little twist. And they could definitely be made tighter. I'm going to check my display, which is good. Throttle is good. Shifter is good. And brake levers are good. Now we're going to tighten our grips with a 3mm Allen key just on this bolt over here. And that should be good. And now we're just going to simply remove these protective covers. Okay, now we're going to turn on our display and electronics and see how everything is functioning. So we're just going to peel this off first. And we're going to press and hold the power button. That should turn on the system. We got our battery in the top left corner. We got our speed in the middle here. We got our pedal assist levels here on the left middle. And then we got our total distance, which is our odometer, and this is the time spent on our trip. So we can go through our PIS modes by pressing the up button, up until level 5, and we can go all the way back down to 0. And the bike will not function in 0, so we can double check that by pressing the throttle. So if we press and hold the up button, that should turn on our front headlight, and that should also turn on our display light. We can do the same process to turn the lights off. So press and hold the up button, and that should turn everything off. Okay, so now we're gonna press and hold the down button to check our walk mode, and we can just simply lean the bike over onto its kickstand to lift the wheel off the ground. Now pressing and holding the down button puts the bike in walk mode, and we can see this person walking icon on the display. Now we will check the throttle. We're going to press the throttle. And now we can also check that our brake cutoff functions are working. We can see on the display here, this in the bottom left corner, this icon that comes on. So I'm pulling my brakes, no throttle, front brake, no throttle. Now we're going to check our PIS function. We're just going to give the cranks a couple of spins. And while we're here, we might as well go through all of our gears. Make sure those are functioning. A little loose there. Now that we noticed that the gears were skipping, we can adjust this barrel adjuster to tighten the tension of the cable to allow it to go into the higher gear. So a couple turns, and now we will check that it's shifting again. So we'll go through it. Okay, now we're going to fold this bike. We're going to start by flipping up this top cover and opening up this clamp. And now folding the bike over, and we can allow it to rest on the battery itself. Now we're going to open up this cover here and pop down the clamp and let the handlebar come down. Put that wire under the seat and finish the close. And we're all good and done with the fold. Okay, so now that we got the bike all fully built, please make sure that you thoroughly read the manual and you double check that all the bolts and nuts on the bike are secured. Check out our YouTube channel for any additional maintenance tips. And for extra support, please check out the link in the description below, and that'll guide you to our ENVO Help Center. Thanks for watching, guys, and hit that subscribe button.